Good morning to you from the Newberry Church of Christ. I'd like to talk to you this morning about one of my favorite books. It's a book that years ago, the first book that I studied in a college class was the book of Hebrews. And I've always been fascinated. It's one that led me to even decide to go to college full time to become a minister. Because the subject is so great to me. I think it's the greatest book that we have in the New Testament about Jesus Christ. And a lot of people are surprised when I say that, but I believe that the book of Hebrews is more about Jesus Christ than any other book in the New Testament. I know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they talk about Jesus, but they talk about Jesus and his earthly life here on earth. We can see that also the book of Acts, it talks about Christ's children, his church, and how it grew here on earth. And then the rest of the New Testament talks about the different books that Paul and James and John wrote. These was books about the life of Christianity living in those that accepted and became his children. But the book of Hebrews is a thesis solely about Christ Jesus. It was written, and the key word in the book of Hebrews was the word better. Because the book of Hebrews helped to show Christians of that day, and they needed it, that the Christianity, that Christ and what he had brought was much better than what they had before. It was a trying time in Christianity at the time of the writing of this book. Most people agree, most scholars agree, that the book was written in the 60s. It was written in the 60s, some 30-some years after the death of Christ. It was written before some of the other books in the Bible, but it was a book that was written before one of the greatest earth-shaking things that happened to Christians and the people that believed in God had ever happened, and that was in 70 AD, the destruction of Jerusalem. At the time of this book, the Jerusalem was still there. And it may surprise you, but majority, for the first 50 years of Christianity, the majority of Christians was of Jewish backgrounds, Hebrews as we call them. And they had been people that had been taught the importance of the temple, the importance of Moses and of the law and all of this. And they had it ingrained in them from an early age how important it was. And at this time the temple was still there. And there was people trying to get them to come back to the temple worship. Come back to being Hebrews, come back to being Jews, and give up this Christianity. And many of them, history tells us, they overcame and went back. Just like today, we have people that come from different forms, different ways of life to Christianity. And so many of them, after they have been a Christian for 2 or 3 years or less, they end up going back and giving up Christianity. So Hebrews can even be for us today, because we have the past trying to reclaim us to our old way of life. The book of Hebrews, these Jewish Christians, and by the way, for the first few years, all people that came was Jews until Cornelius, and then the church grew outside of Hebrewism. But the Hebrews, probably in the first century, and even at this time, made up over 50% of the church of Christians came from a Hebrew background. But the book was written to tell them that Christ is better. Matter of fact, it is in the book at least 148 references to Christ. If you look at it different ways, some have said over 200. But we can all agree at least 148 references to Christ Jesus in this book about him. And the key subject we see is better. The better is mentioned in the New Testament 19 times. It is mentioned 19 times, and 13 of those times 13 of those times it is mentioned in the book of Hebrews. 13 times. Because Jesus is better. This morning I'd like to go over with you a few of the things that it is, and not talk about them in depth, but just give you an idea of what is better. Well, in chapter 1 and 2 we find the word better about Christ. It says that Christ was better than angels. I get tickled that so many people today think that when one of their loved ones died, they say, well, you know, he's an angel in heaven looking down upon us. Well, the Bible does not teach that. The angel teaches that they are ministering servants to those that come to Christ. That is, we as Christians, they are ministering servant. When we die, if we are a child of God, we are not going to take a demotion and be an angel. We are sons or daughters of God, and we are brothers and sisters of Christ Jesus, and we are going to be with Him, and yea, be served. Servants will be the angels. We will be in God's family. We are better than angels. But then also in chapter 3 and 4, it says we are better than Moses. We are better than Jesus was better than Moses. Moses was the great lawgiver, great man of God, but still yet Jesus is better. And then chapter 5 and 6 and 7 talks about that Jesus is better than Aaron. He's better than Aaron and better than that priesthood. He's a better priesthood, better than Aaron. And then in chapter 8, he is a mediator of a better covenant. A better covenant. The covenant that we have today is much better than the old. Nobody could live up to the old. The old was complicated. But we have a new covenant, the New Testament, which is much better today. And then he is a minister of a better tabernacle. Chapter 9 and 10. A better tabernacle. A tabernacle not made with cloth and wood, but a tabernacle. Jesus says, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am there you might be also. And then Jesus is a better example. We see all of this talking about how it is so much better. I like in chapter 10, 1 through 3, where it talks about the old. I think it sums it up very well there. And it sums it up when it says that the old was a shadow. It was a shadow of things to come. The Old Testament was showing it was good. All of that was good. It was good. But there was something that was better coming. You know, we had life good if we live in America, but we have it better when we become a Christian. My friend, I asked you to read about Christ. Read about how much He is better. And then some of you need to come back to Him. Some of you need to come back to Him because you have basically did what you should not. Hebrews, look at 10 and 26, which says, if ye sin willfully after ye have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sin. My friend, my brothers, my neighbors, if we can help you any way to show and help you to follow the better way through Jesus Christ, give us a call. God be with you till we meet again.